of the Rebbe before, but this is a very appropriate Sicha for this Shabbos. Shabbos Varchim, the month of Av, Menachem Av. Bring up the text. The Rebbe before. Here we go. So this Sicha, this is a Fabrengen of the Rebbe from the year Sicha Shabbos Parshas Matos-Masei, the Shabbos of Matos-Masei, like this week, and it's Shabbos Matos-Masei Mevarchim, blessing the month of Menachem Av Tavshin Tezvav 1955. So it's mamish same kaviyas like this year, same setup like this year. The Rebbe says like this: Kvar doiver pam. We spoke in the past. Al kach, and the idea she'inyan ha'atzvus, the idea of being etzev. Etzev is like in a down or depressed even mood. The Bein HaMetzarim in the 3 weeks, which is called Bein HaMetzarim, between Shiva Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. Ein tzarich liyis b'Shabbos. The Rebbe says one does not have to be etzev b'Shabbos. Kiven sheb'Shabbos tzarich liyis b'simcha. Shabbos one has to be joyful and happy. V'yiseirim is more than that. B'Shabbos zu tzarich liyis hasimcha oid yeiser masher b'Shabbos acheres. Not only does one have to be simcha on this Shabbos, even notwithstanding the fact that we're within the 3 weeks, but the Rebbe says one has to be more b'simcha, more happy now than one maybe is b'simcha usually and should be on every Shabbos, but even more b'simcha on these Shabbos and these weeks. Why? Kadei shelo yichshash, so no one should think shaheder hasimcha, that maybe the lack of simcha, or if it's not up to the level, maybe someone's going to be suspicious. It's because a person is holding between the 3 weeks, and maybe why the person's a little bit down, a little negative, a little quieter, is because it's the 3 weeks. So we have to show full energy and full vigor to our energy on Shabbos. So no one should suspect that maybe we're a little quieter because of the 3 weeks. What does this mean? What does this mean b'pnimius? How do we apply this to our avodas Hashem? So the Rebbe says as follows: Shabbos Shabbos is the way things will be, hello Reb Shimon, in the days to come, meaning to say in the days of the Mashiach, which it says about the days of La'asid Yoim Shekulei Shabbos. It's a day that's going to be complete, full of Shabbos. And we know that this Geula that's coming any second, this redemption that's coming any second, is going to be such a powerful redemption. There won't even be a reshima, there won't be any sign even, that there once was a Gullus, there once was an exile. They take us totally out of the space of exile. And then we're going to be in the absolute space of Gula. So therefore the Rebbe says, if the idea of Asalavi of Mashiach is Shabbos, like it says Yom Shekuli Shabbos, and when Mashiach is going to come, it's going to be such a level of Geula that there won't be any sign of Galus. So too the Shabbos of Bein HaMetzarim, which is the Shabbosim where we're in the weeks that we're remembering the destruction and the cause of Galus, we can't have any rishima, any sign of Galus, of etzev, of depression. Omnam. This, what we've discussed so far, is reasons why one should not be the opposite of happiness. The Rebbe never liked to talk about, even to describe in words of negative. So the Rebbe says opposite of simcha. So why? But why does this week have to be even more b'simcha? Besides the reason that we said before, because of a chashash, because of a concern that maybe someone will accuse you, or you'll accuse yourself of being in a matzav of etzav and a matzav of depression, and therefore because of the 3 weeks. But internally, what's the idea of the extra simcha on the Shabbos and Bein HaMetzarim? So the Rebbe, this is an idea that the Rebbe taught us many times. The Rebbe says, you do what's known, Shaga'ula habala achri hagolis mevi lidei matzav naili yoiser mimasha hayikoidim hagolis. This is the rule of thumb in general. In Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe says it over and over again. You read that Tzarech Aliyah means when you go down, when you have a descent, when you have a fall in life, whether it's as an individual in your personal life or it's collectively for the Jewish people, the idea can never be to get back to where you once were. because that's what's the point of the going down? What's the point of falling and going through agony and going through tsar if all you're going to do is get back to where you were before? What's the point? Well, if the neshama goes down to this world and comes back just the way it was, and that's if, so what's the point? So the Rebbe says you do. It's known that the geula. Hold on, Jonathan. It's known that the geula, the redemption that comes after the galus, brings to a situation. You have to elevate the place even higher than you were before the exile. Why? And if you're going to go back to exactly how things were, is what's the purpose of the galus? Okay, you do as is known. A person will never go through the stress and the toil of taking down their house and remodeling it exactly the way it was before. What's the point? It was like that before. So if you're going to if you take down your house and build another house, you want to build something that's better. Otherwise, what's the point? The only reason you're going to build something after bringing down something, after the destroying something or taking it apart, has to be for a higher reason, for better. Before the falling down. Same thing with the temples. The temples were destroyed. It can't be to get back to the exact same temple. Yes, Jonathan, you want to ask a question?
That's a yes, right. When my family would tell me, right, I remember I would cry out, okay, when I was a child, right, that I want the Mashiach, right, so that we wouldn't have to fast on Tisha B'Av and Shabbos B'Tamas. And my family would tell me, we're going to have it every year and everything. They never assured me, right, that Mashiach was going to come and that it's going to be Yontif.
You're right. They should have. They should have told you. Don't worry, Mashiach is coming, and there's going to be a time when you're not going to have to fast. You're going to be b'simcha. Yeah, you don't have to be a Chabadnik for that. It's a clear pasuk in the prophets. It's brought down from the pasuk. Okay, so the Rebbe continues. That's in general. That any time a person has a fall or any time there's a golus, you go to Mitzrayim. The Jewish people didn't go to Mitzrayim to get back to where they were. That's not the point. So and by the way, psychologically, a person has to know that. And the Rebbe always talks about that one of the remedies of dealing with a galus or an afila or a fall or a difficult situation is to let go of the past in a way. It means although we learn from our past, but let go to have faith in the future. Like the new moon, right? The moon comes very small. It has to forget the past moon, the way it was the last month. It has to have hope and have confidence of its growth in the new moon and let go of last month. So same too, if you're holding on to go back to where you were, that can hold you back from the future of what's waiting for you. So you have to know how to sometimes let go. So Rebbe says the same thing with galus. If you're gonna hold on to, I remember the fish that we ate. I remember how things were before I went on to Mitzrayim. Yosef HaTzadik didn't do that. He named one of his sons Menachem because he missed his father, but he named Ephraim to go forward. So the Rebbe says, "Inin zehu b'chlal." That's in general. Anytime there's a galus, whether it's a galus prati, a personal exile, or geula or a galus klali, the other times you went into exile, and we had a geula afterwards. Always like that. The point has to be that you're going to a higher place. Shamatziv shel achri ha-geula, that the situation of things are the way they are after the geula, after the redemption. The galus. The hagalas. It has to be better than the way things were before, when there was an exile, when that you have to be getting better than the way things were before the exile. I feel even if we're going to have a situation of you have a redemption that later is going to come another galus, but that redemption at the moment, like Mitzrayim, right? At the end of the day is whether it was meant to be, it wasn't meant to be, how it was meant to be. But after Mitzrayim, we went into galus again. We had the galus of Bavel, the galus of Edom, the galus of Yavin, Madai. So we had the galus that happened after Mitzrayim. Is Harihilam Mikoidim HaGalus. But nevertheless, so to the Geul of Mitzrayim is the way it was that when we left Egypt better than before we came into Egypt. Otherwise, there was no purpose of Egypt. Because we accomplished things in Egypt. We were able to refine Egypt, like the Gemara says. We emptied Egypt of all its sparks. That was the whole purpose of the galus. So again, everything has a purpose, and not so and by the way, if there's no addition, there's no gain, and the gain is not just like you have sometimes when you talk about the nitzutzis that we took out of Mitzrayim. That itself is not just that we gained we had a job. and we completed our job. But personally, it wasn't worth. It was either worthwhile, it wasn't worthwhile. We didn't gain anything personally. Taking out the nitzutzos has to be personal gain as well. Because if there's no personal gain, so why did you have to go through it? Mikolshkein, the Rebbe says, even more so. But now we're talking about. Not talking about a geula from Mitzrayim that we're going to go later, unfortunately, the way things were, back into Bavel years later and difficult times afterwards. But we're talking about now the geula mitis. This is the true geula, the true redemption. That's never going to have a gullus again. This is the real complete redemption. That's not going to have another gullus afterwards. There won't be another exile. It won't be another situation like that. Is harivadish idea geula nifala or chodesh legamri or chodesh legamri. You have to surely know that the light that's going to come with this geula, it's going to be a totally different light on a whole higher level, much more than, of course, than a regular geula, and much more than anything we had before the gullus. And therefore, there's something that's going to be achieved over here. Inyan chodesh, inyan shabai loy shaykh, inyan shagalus klal. It's going to be such a level of light that's not possible for there to be another exile. And before we went into this galus of close to 2,000 years, they didn't have this situation. We weren't at the geula that we're going to be. How do we know that? Because even the lights that came with the other redemptions, like Mitzrayim and after we left Bavel, there was a galus afterwards. We went back to Edom. There was a second instruction of a second temple. So therefore, it's not the same light that's coming with Mashiach. What's the Rebbe saying, therefore? Because of the gula, but the gula that we're going to have now is going to be such a kind of revelation that's not possible for an exile. It's over. The concept of exile is over. The whole avodah of gullus is over. So if we're this Shabbos, we're going to Shabbos Matos-Masei, and we're going to be, this is the second Shabbos of the 3 weeks, right? Last Shabbos was Pinchas, was also the 3 weeks. So with the Shabbos Bein we're the second of the third Shabbos, of the 3 Shabbosim. And Shabbos is the idea of Geula. And the Geula of the Geula Amitis is in Yaneshim Ein La'asad Lavi Yom Shekuli Shabbos. And this is we're tapping into the energy of the Mashiach energy of the day that's going to be fully Shabbos. Of course we're going to be more happy. We're not just happy because we don't want to be negative in a negative 3 weeks. And Shabbos has to be a time of happiness. We're tapping into the future, into the energy that's going to be with Mashiach. And that energy is beyond any kind of etzav. There's nothing to be depressed about. It's a place where there's not even a rishima. There's not even a sign that there was a galus. And not only that, the Shabbos, that the whole idea of the 3 weeks has to be, we're not supposed to just stay in the 3 weeks and remember that there's a concept of destruction. The 3 weeks is an energy to turn it around. And when is the most appropriate time? And when is the most auspicious time to be able to turn around whatever the 3 weeks represent, which is Godless, is in the Shabbos of the 3 weeks. The Sasin and Simcha, to turn the 3 weeks into days of happiness. Because this energy of Mashiach, of Geula that's coming soon, is the power to transform and to turn around the negative energy of the 3 weeks. That it itself becomes days of Sasin and Simcha, like the Prophet said. And there's a halacha, it says in the Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch. If you want to know how nice can my meal be, how joyful, it's not Chabad's minhag. Next week, Mashiach is not here by next week, and you go to certain shuls here in Yerushalayim, they're going to sing L'chadaydi Te'echa. And Chabad, that's not like just we don't do it. It's unheard of, such a concept. You're going to sing L'chadaydi Te'echa. So here, but the Rebbe says that not only that, if you want to know if you're allowed to make a meal like King Solomon in his height, in his heyday, b'shaitai, which is the highest point of the Jewish people's time, is that the moon was at its completest. Hold on, Aaron. And therefore, the Rebbe says this Shabbos has the power to turn it around to mamish good. You can go out there if you want to spend another few dollars and buy a nicer bottle of wine, or another piece of kugel, or nicer flowers for the house for Shabbos. These are all things that is an energy that one should do. And if you have any doubts, it's the 3 weeks. Don't have any doubts. And then the Rebbe sang a song of Simcha. Yes, Aaron.
What's the song you mentioned before, and then you mentioned the song of Simcha? Can you tell me what those 2 songs are?
What do you mean 2 songs?
You said there was a song that you guys don't sing, but other shuls do.
Hmm.
Then you just
No,
mentioned the
no, no,
song.
no, no. I don't want to be a bearer of bad news. I'm saying there are those who have a custom. I've been to shuls here in Yerushalayim that they have a custom. I don't think it's a Sephardic custom. I think it must be Ashkenazi custom. That when they sing Lechadodi, the Lechadodi song that we sing on
Yeah.
Friday night. So they'll sing the Lechadodi, at least one stanza, one part of it. They'll sing it to the tune of Eicha on next week on the Shabbos of the 9 days. Shabbos Chazon, which is the Shabbos that's called the Shabbos prior to Tisha B'Av, which is Chazon. So then the Rebbe also was very strong, especially the last years of the Simcha. We have to have even more on Shabbos Chazon than this week. I mean, next week Shabbos Chazon, Mashiach is already going to be here. We're going to have the vision itself. And then the Rebbe doesn't say what song, but the Rebbe asked that they sing a song of joy at the Fabrengen. Afterwards, the Rebbe said to sing the song for the Maimer, and the Rebbe said the Maimer on Lahavin Inyan Hanadarim, the idea of the vows. And the vows are connected to the first part of the parsha, which is Parshas Matos, which is the laws of the vows. So the Rebbe says, B'Shabbasu yesh shtei parshas. After the Rebbe said the Maimer, the Rebbe said a talk, a Sicha. And the Rebbe said that in this Shabbos we have two portions that we read. Matos and Masei. B'negei le'inyan vaydaber Moshe al Reish Matos, ideas that are discussed in the first parsha, which Moshe spoke to the heads of the tribes, which are called the Matos. Doiver kvar le'il b'Maimer. The Rebbe said, I discussed these ideas in the Maimer. Means the Maimer, then in Beis, the Rebbe talked about the Maimer. The Rebbe spoke about Parshas Matos. B'bir inyan hanedarim, we spoke about the vows. V'inyan shachachim matos, and added the idea that the wise person has the ability to disavow the vow. B'bir inyan hiskalus, and then there was the idea of inclusiveness. One could find what the Rebbe is referring to if one learns the Maimer. V'ati yesh davar is the inyan da'ila maseh. The Rebbe says, now I'm going to talk about the next parsha, which is the final parsha of the weekend, the final parsha of Bamidbar Chazak, which is Parshas Masei. And this is also an edited Sicha that's printed in Lakut Sichas Chelik Beis, very famous talk of the Rebbe, about the travels of the Jewish people. And we spoke about this many times in our classes, this talk. The Rebbe says as follows. Chsiv, it says, Eile Maaseh b'nei Yisrael, these are the travels of the Jewish people, Asher yotzu me'eretz Mitzrayim, when they left Egypt. Maaseh lashon rabim. It doesn't say this is the travel that the Jewish people did when they left Egypt, but they said these are the travels plurally. Kloimar, meaning to say, Shahayu Maaseh rabim, there were many travels. Shebehem yatzu b'nei Yisrael Mitzrayim, that the Jewish people left Egypt. V'yidu akushas, we know the story, the question that we've learned many times in the Likutei Torah. Hari b'nei Yisrael yatzu Mitzrayim b'masa echad b'vad. In all their travels, there's only one of their travels that he left Egypt. That's the first one. Hamasa, the travel from Ramses to Sukkot. When they passed Piacherois, right? So when they went to Sukkot, they were no longer in Egypt. And when they left Sukkot, they went to wherever the third stop was. They didn't leave Egypt. They left Sukkot. So how could he say that they left plurally many in their many leavings of Egypt? They only left Egypt once. Shar Masois, the other times they traveled. Hayu Kfar Achi Tziri Mitzrayim. It was after already they left Egypt. So they left Egypt already. So you only left Egypt once. So why are we saying plurally that they left Egypt many times? Why do we talk about the plural travels in life? Why are there 42 travels? It took 42 travels from when they left Egypt until they entered the land. Eretz Tov, the land of goodness and plenty. Why? The Rebbe says, why do you have to say there's many travels that we left Egypt and many travels until we got to the land of plenty? So the Rebbe says we could ask on both questions. One is, why are we leaving Egypt in plural? Why are we traveling plurally? And why is the getting to the land of plenty also only at the end? Why it's only at the, what's the question? As soon as we left Egypt. The second we stepped out of Egypt and we were no longer officially slaves. What does it mean, Mitzrayim? They went out of places of limitations and boundaries. We were already in broadness. So why do we say that they only got to the land of broadness after 42 travels? As soon as we left Egypt, we left Mitzrayim, we were in a place of broadness. If you leave a place of limitations, you're already in a place of abundance. Why do we have to go 42 travels to get to broadness? It was broadness already in Sukkot. The first Sukkot is the first location we left after Egypt. It's the name of a place. The idea of limitations and broadness is all in the question of perspective. What's broad? What's my limitations yesterday, and my broadness today? Tomorrow, my broadness is a new limitation. Just because when a person it's psychologically, as when a person gets out of Meitzar, so yes, of course, the second you have freedom to even wash your hands or to take a shower, what you didn't have before, that's merchav, that's broadness. But then, obviously, for a person who's not in that situation, that's not necessarily broadness. That's basics. If not, even you could have a situation that what you consider broadness versus what you had in your limitations, tomorrow you can look at it and say that's itself a limitation. I want much more than that, right? So it's what was yesterday considered broadness, today is considered meitzar, it's considered limitations. You're still in Egypt. The idea is you have to get to essential broadness. Again, essential broadness is like we've looked, like essential, like the essential essence. The the essence of atmi, the essence of the essential essence. There's also essential broadness. What's essential broadness? A broadness that there is no mater afterwards. This is it. This is as broad as this is a whole nother league. We've learned about this in the 49 limitation, the 49 levels of the Sphere Omer, the 50th gate. The 50th gate is not another gate. It's a whole nother level of gate. That's the idea of the merchav atzmi, the essential merchav amiti, the essential broadness is another whole level of broadness. Hamasa achron, and that's the last travel. Ayardin yurechoi, when the Jewish people were passing over the Jordan River. When you pass over the Jordan River, you're going into another whole league and definition of what's broadness. The Kayal Mashiach, we know that the idea of Yardin Yurechai is referring to, because the Rebbe is going based on the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, that the 42 travels the Jewish people are going to always do. Right now, we're getting ready to go with Mashiach Tzidkenu into Eretz Yisrael. We're holding again the 42nd travel to go into Eretz Yisrael. And the idea of Yirechai is connected to Mashiach, which is why we read about that prophecy on the Achron Shal Pesach, the Moirach V'dayin, the idea of being able to smell. Yirechai is from the word smell, the fragrance, and V'dayin to judge. Ad az harigam shlegab madrega tachtoina harzein shamerchav. So up until the point of you pass over the Jordan River, to a new concept of broadness. So every time you reach a broadness, it's only broadness versus where you were yesterday. But where you could go tomorrow or in this afternoon, today's broadness is still a Mitzrayim, is still a limitation. And that's why it answers all the questions. That's why the travels are called 42 travels of Mitzrayim, because you're constantly leaving a limitation until you get to the land of goodness and plenty, which is Hachava Amiti, true broadness. V'masa Rishon, when the first time we traveled, Hagam Shekvar Yotzim Mitzrayim, even though we technically left Egypt, V'nichnasu b'meil l'merchav, so automatically, when you're no longer in the limitations and the restrictions of Mitzrayim, you're automatically in a place of broadness. Your broadness from Mitzrayim. Hinagav Madregal Yaniyos, but going forward to the next space, the next achievement. You're still in the place of Mitzrayim. Therefore, you have to keep on traveling. To get out of this Mitzrayim. So we don't just travel, we're not just traveling distance. We're also traveling in quality. So we're actually leaving a place to go to a higher quality of place. And that's why it's plural. That we left Egypt, because every time you leave to heart, you grow further. You broaden the concept of what your abilities are, to see new opportunities for broadness. You're leaving Mitzrayim. The Rebbe says because every time they left the concept of Mitzrayim. Till you get to the level where you've reached essential true broadness. The Rebbe says the Torah is everlasting. It's not a story that once upon a time. In every generation. Especially when we're talking about things that are connected to Mitzrayim, which Mitzrayim clearly is something that we say. A person has to constantly view themselves. As I left Egypt today, the idea of Hayom, the Alter Rebbe had it. We say b'chol dar v'der chayv adam. That's we say in the Haggadah. Now Alter Rebbe Tani says you have to look at it daily. It's not you don't have to wait. It's not a generational move. It's a daily achievement. Why do you have to? It's not something that you have that you say. Okay, our whole generation is going to make a pivot forward. Every day you could make a pivot forward. It's Harizer Roy B'Avodah. This is a lesson in life, and how this is how we're supposed to view things. And Avodah. Shegam kasher kvar pol avodah shalmayel mitam v'das. And the Rebbe says, what does it mean? We're not talking about taking small steps. Fine, I'll take a small step, another push-up. Tomorrow I'll do 2 push-ups, 3 push-ups. The Rebbe's not talking about making small steps. Because that's like the Rebbe, like Chassidus says, that's an angel. That's not a person. A person makes big steps. Shegam kasher pol avodah shalmayel mitam v'das. The Rebbe says, even let's say, hopefully, that today you reach a level that you're able to reach beyond your limitations, beyond even reason. Tam v'das means reason and logic. Out of any levels of limitation, you pushed boundaries today that were unimaginable when you started the day. The Rebbe says not just a Mitzrayim of overcoming a unclean or an unholy or ungodly situation, but even within the limitations of Kedusha, you've broken boundaries. It's not enough. Because there's a higher level that you could achieve. You're still in Egypt. Therefore, you can't stop. You have to push forward. The Rebbe says we could apply this in our davening. What does it mean to daven? He avoid this adam. That's what it means. Avoid the shibboleth. What's the avoda? If you want to say what is avoid, avoid is daven. Bein Torah v'tefillah. What's the difference between Torah, learning Torah, and davening? Torah is from above down. God gifted us the Torah, and how could we be effective through Torah? Is bringing down a light. So in certain things we learned about the power of the Rashbi, right? The Rashbi was able to bring down, affect change with saying Torah. But tefillah is that's what we learned in last week's class, right? But tefillah is all about you elevating. What is davening? Davening is the ladder positioned on the floor, and its top reaching to heaven. You have to climb the ladder from below above to go up higher. You go from below above. Climbing out of your limitations to a place of broadness. That's what davening is. Where you do what's known. There's many elevations. Every time you climb another rung of the ladder, you're going out of your situation. They say the ladder of Yaakov had four levels, 4 rungs, right? It's not enough. The Rebbe says it's no such thing as it's only 4 steps. You have to keep on going higher and higher, and you're climbing the ladder of tefillah, of avodah. Avodah rishayna, what's the first avodah when it comes to davening? Is achana l'tefillah, how one prepares themselves for davening. Because you're coming to daven, who are you davening to? You're davening before the Almighty God. Habilti balgvul, that God has no limitations. Ubilti bal tachas, and has no bottom line. So there's no end to God. And I'm standing, a person, in a body and an animal soul. And I don't look so clean, right? I've dirtied myself with sin. How can a person daven? The Rebbe says in Yiddish, how are you going to stand and daven when you're talking to God who's limitless? You're so limited in a body with the nefesh habahamis of the godly, with an animal soul. You're not exactly fresh and clean from without any luggage of sin. So in order that, you have to have a chana. You have to have preparation for davening. And what does it mean to preparation for davening? To free yourself from yourself, from your limitations and from your mindset, from your nyanyo. Close down. And then you could stand to daven. Inyan za'atzmai. Ha'amida l'tfila. Preparing yourself to daven. Oid l'fnei shemispal, before you daven. That's the idea of going in. I'm going into the mindset of davening. That's one of the ideas of why by Chassidim we wear gartel. The act of putting on the gartel is hachin likar selkach Yisrael, is to prepare yourself to stand before God. By putting on a gartel, it's an act of getting ready to stand before God. It's a physical act. So the Rebbe says, even before you start to say the Hodu, even before you start to say the Matovu V'Lecha Yaakov, the Rebbe mentions it. This idea that you put on your gartel, etut on dem gartel. When a person puts on the gartel is the belt that we wrap ourselves, the Chassidim wrap themselves before they daven to separate the heart from the lower part of the body. That's an act of oimedul tefillah. Now you're ready to daven. The gartling zich, the putting on the gartel is the act of going out of your present and refining yourself to position yourself for davening. That's the act of positioning yourself to getting out of your limitations. From this is understood and be understood gamkein. We find even in the revealed parts of Torah. It says before a person davens, one should go to the restroom, as halacha says, and wash your hands. Yifane, what does it mean to rest? To cleanse yourself, relieve yourself. Pirusha lahasir mi'atzma esapsoilus. You have to get rid of your waste. Your revealed waste and your inner waste. And after you've relieved yourself of your waste, that's the sur meira, that's the going away from bad, is yital yadav, you wash your hands. Lahasir satuma, to get rid of the effect of the waste, of the impurity. She'inyan shal makiv. So though you got rid of the content of the waste, but there's still an aura of waste. That's the makiv, the surrounding. And that is you get rid of that by washing your hands. You already got rid of the content by relieving yourself. As the Rambam writes, when it comes to tuma, it's not like there's something you could see. Oh, I could touch. This is tamei. I mean, you could touch a thing that's tamei, but the tuma itself you can't touch. That's what the Rambam says. It's something beyond our understanding. It's a chayk, the idea of tum and tara, of purity and impurity. But even that chayk of tuma, that it's not logical, it's not tangible, but you have to get rid of it, and that you get rid of through washing your hands. And of course, going to the mikvah. I'm adding that. The Alpha Pikain. The Rebbe says that's not enough. You can't just say that. What am I going to do? I'm going to put on the gartel. I'm going to go to the restroom. I'm going to wash my hands. I got rid of my waste. I got rid of the tumah from the encompassing tumah. That's not enough. You have to actually daven. Start saying hoidu. And the Rebbe says, the Rebbe is showing it in the davening itself, the different levels of davening each time you're going out of your limitation. So now that you say hoidu and you start davening, you're already going out of whatever the garteling is, the putting on the gartel or the pinoi or the releasing is, and you're going to a higher level. And you're going to give it a total higher place by starting with hoidu. What are you saying in hoidu? Now I'm acknowledging God. And that's just going from prep of davening to davening within the davening itself. There's not just one aliyah, one elevation. It's a ladder. A ladder has different rungs of the ladder. So there's another aliyah. Like I said, there's four levels of the ladder. And one of the things that we know, and if you notice, one of the tefillahs that we say constantly in davening is the Ana B'Koach. The Ana B'Koach corresponds to God's name of number 42, because there's each one of the Ana B'Koach has its 7 times 6 words. So that's the 40. That's the 42. The last one we don't say the abbreviation. Right? By Spheres Omer, we count the 7th combination Malchus that connects all the 6. It's right 7. It's 7 lines on Mechach, and that's the Shem Membeis. That's why on Friday night we say on Mechach, because we're elevating. On Mechach is elevation. We're elevating from Choil, from the week to Shabbos. Shekol Madregas the Gam Madregas Shlemaylimenu Hoidayin Shametzegvul, and in the davening itself, every elevation, the where you're coming from is a limitation to where you're going. V'achmik Gim L'Shmon Esrei. until we reach Shemon Esrei. That's the highest level, according to how we mostly view tefillah. You're totally going out of your space. Only after, that's what we learned in the Maimer, after Reuven, Shimon, Levi, which are the three levels of the Shema, then the Amidah, even though seemingly, the question is, what do you mean you're going out of your space? The whole tefillah is about you. Heal me, bless me for Parnasa, and all the other of the 18 blessings that we daven. But that's the whole point. The point is, by the time you reach Shemona Esrei, throughout all the stages of the davening, then those quests are not personal. Meaning to say that just I need money, I need parnasa, I need health. Your health is goes hand in hand with your avodah, with what Hashem needs from you. You need to be healthy to serve Hashem. You need parnasa to serve Hashem. You're not negotiating with God. You're aligning yourself with God. Your interests are the same as God's interests. That's what Shemona Esrei means. That's why it's the highest tefillah. To reach that when you daven for yourself, you're davening for what Hashem needs, because what you need is what Hashem needs. That's the highest level of elevation. Shemona Esrei is the highest level. You're so out of your mitzias that's not a contradiction to ask for shlema, and it's not a contradiction to ask for parnasa. In any kind of self. You're so out of yourself. You're no longer that person who needed shining and refining and cleansing, because when you're still talking about yourself, that you need to cleanse yourself, or you did cleanse yourself, it's still about you. That's why Shemona Esrei is Yehuda. We start with Haida and we finish with Haida. Haida is the way we begin, which is Hodu. But after all the stages of davening, when we're standing there before Shemona Esrei, Vatamid Miledas, she stopped giving birth. Why? Because it's total bittul. That's what we learned in the Likutei Torah in Vayechi. And he's standing like a servant before one's master. You're totally not a mitzias. And you say, Hashem sefasai tiftach, God, open my lips, fi yagid l'sech, so I could say your praises. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yiftach es fasai, v'ani rak echsar al dvarav. I'm only repeating what God is saying. Therefore, we find that the Shemona Esrei has seemingly a contradiction. Bitul b'tachas, you're supposed to be Hashem sefasai tiftach. God's opening my lips. Total bitul, Yehuda, Haida, total acknowledgement. I'm nobody. I'm just repeating what God is saying. And then the second thing, like I said, you have a kashit tzarcha. You're asking about all your personal things. How could you be a nobody and have needs? The kashit tzarcha is he has needs. We're not talking about I need spiritual growth. And the ikar is of Shemona Esrei is your physical needs. When you're preparing for Shemona Esrei, you don't mention anything personal. You talk about God and the angels and the greatness of God and the Ava and the Yira and the Yachid Levavenu, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, V'yahavta, I love God, V'hayim Shemai, I fear God, V'yomer is Leviah, V'yatziv, V'nacha, and all these are davenings of spirituality. You don't talk anything about your physical needs. You're seemingly out of yourself, out of your space. And then comes Shemona Esrei Davka. Is he Bekasha Tzarchav Gashmi? What are you asking? You're asking for your physical needs, and not in concept, but in specifics. And therefore, in every single tefillah of the Shemona Esrei, if there's specific things that you feel is not exactly covered in the general tefillah, you have an opportunity to add it in halachically into the tefillah. Whether it's in the Shema Kaleinu or each tefillah, each prayer on its own. If you need parnasa, you could do it in Baruch Aleinu. If you need refuah, you could do it in Rafeinu. But you know, the idea is, so why is it not a contradiction? Then I said, like I said before, because mitzad tachal sa'ilui, when do you have to be careful not to mix in your personal needs is when you're not totally given over to God. So you're not focusing on your personal needs. Mitzad tachal sa'ilui, because you reach such a high level. Yocheli is shamiskalus, therefore there's inclusiveness. In that place, your physical needs, your material needs is not a contradiction to being totally, absolutely connected to God. Because if it exists and you're just hiding it or not paying attention to it, it means there's a part of you that's not connected to God. You have nothing to be ashamed about. That you have healing that's needing, or a parnasa that's needing, or any of the other brachas that's needing, because there's nothing to hide. That's part of who you are. It's part of your relationship with God. So the Rebbe says, there could be inclusiveness. At Shemona Esrei, you could have what seemingly is a contradiction, two opposites. Like the Rebbe, I guess, spoke in the Maimer. The higher you are, the more there's a level of inclusiveness. That's how things are going to be with Mashiach comes. It's not going to be that the souls are going to see. The flesh is going to see. You're not going to have to leave the physical body. You're going to feel spirituality and godliness in the physical, the same way you feel physical feelings of your flesh. The inclusiveness, and that's why Yiddishkeit, we're not ashamed of anything. It's not a contradiction. We don't forbid anything. There's obviously different levels because sometimes a person is not able to disconnect from the physicality. But in general, if there's something that could be done, it's a mitzvah. Amnam, the Rebbe says, now notwithstanding the person reaches the highest level when it comes to the Shemona Esrei. When it comes tomorrow. So 1 second, why do I have to daven again tomorrow? I've reached I ran the marathon on yesterday. Today I ran the marathon. I reached mamish the highest level of bittul. You start again. Put on your gartel, wash your hands, go to the restroom, go to the mikvah, prepare yourself for davening all over again. Starting from the preparation. And back to Shemona Esrei. As great as his achievements was, and it was a merchav, it was broadness, but that was yesterday. That's a meitzar to what you're going to achieve today. And just like we see that in davening, that every day you start over again, and you're not running around in a circle. You're climbing a ladder of every day. So there's a ladder within the tefillin, there's a ladder of a daily ladder. So the Rebbe says, and just like that's in davening, so too in everything in our avodah. Ha'adam tzarech liyis mahalach. A person we're not angels. We're not oimdim. We're not standing. We're not trying to find a good spot and staying there. We have to be a mahalach. And like the Rebbe says, we're not going to get to the rest of the Sicha, which is a wonderful Sicha. The thing is that sometimes even the mahalach is sometimes not looking like progress. Sometimes, like the 42 travels of the desert, not all of them are moving forward. Some of them seem like they were moving backwards, but you have to have faith that itself is progress. Even if you went totally out of the bad, you're in a high space. I love the das, you still have to know. Don't get comfortable. That's not enough. Why? Because there's a higher space. There's something that where you're holding now that seems absolute. At a higher level, there's still something there's still a shemetz. It's not like it's like purity of silver, right? Like we said many times, you try to get 99.9999. There's a little bit of alloy there. If you really break it down, you bring in the machinery, you can see there's a little foreign things that's still there. It's not, you didn't 100% cleanse yourself. What's the proof that you're not 100% yet? This is an amazing thing. What's the compass to know that there's still something wrong with you? When I say something wrong, I mean there's still work to be done. If you could still look around at the world and look at another person and see negative in any way in another person, that means you still have a lot of work to get done on yourself. Not that you have to fix that person. The very fact that you're seeing bad in another person is a sign that you're not 100% cleansed. As the Holy Baal Shem Tov teaches us, if you ever see something negative in the next person, that's a proof. You also have bad, not generally bad. You have the specifics that you're judging. You're seeing something and you're noticing something specific about a person. You're struggling with that same idea. Maybe not exactly in the same way, but there's something of that there. Even if it's not 100%, but in a refined way, it is there. And if you see it, like the Rebbe always says, the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov said, another person is a mirror to you. What you see in the next person is what you're seeing in yourself. And therefore you have to sign up. I have work to be done on myself. We have to constantly be trying to refine yourself. I say not to break yourself. You don't look at yourself and say, oh, I have something negative about myself. I have to punish myself with tinus and sigufim, with fasting and other kinds of things that could pain myself. You have to refine yourself. You do Maimer Baal Shem Tov, like the Baal Shem Tov's famous teaching on the pasuk, Kisira Chamar Senecha, when you see the chaymer, the coarseness, which is your enemy. So you think that what you have to do is leave it. You have to aziv ta'aziv. You have to help it. Miyad b'kaymer b'bayker, when you wake up in the morning. All of la'aser chamayri, you have to take your donkey. The hainu is a chaymer, your coarseness. And only that's why the donkey brings us to Mashiach. That's the Gemara says that we learned in our Gemara class in Megillah, that one of the things they changed for Talmei HaMelech when they translated the Torah into Greek was they took out that Moshe came to redeem the Jewish people by a donkey. They said he traveled by his means of transportation, which could mean that the Gemara says it could have meant a camel, because camel would have been, or a horse would have been a better way to travel. Talmei HaMelech would have had big issues. Why didn't Moshe take a donkey? Why didn't the Jewish people send him a limousine? Why did he go with a donkey that's slow? They had all the questions, right? There's no questions. There's never a challenge to find questions. So they changed it. They took out the word chamor, that he didn't travel by donkey. Why? Because Talmei HaMelech couldn't understand this. This is not an avoid for a guy. To understand that there's a concept called a chaymer. That how do you get to Mashiach is you have to ride on your chaymer. You have to ride on your coarseness. You can't run away from who you are. The Shabbos are gashmi. It's not to leave your flesh. The idea is that your flesh itself should see. To run and refine themselves. That we have to know that we have to take that and to bring it closer to God. And the Rebbe says that the Masais this is a continuing Sicha. The rest, obviously, it's a powerful Sicha. We always could learn on their own. I recommend to learn the Sicha. It's, I think, translated in English as well. Wishing everyone a good Shabbos, a good Chodesh, and we'll see you all at the next class. Again, Motzei Shabbos, we have our class in Halacha with the story of the Baal Shem Tov, and look at the Torah Sunday night, etc. Laila Tov, everyone, take care.